What is happening, you beautiful bastards? Welcome back to another week. This week, we speak to one Marc Cortez. Marc is interesting. He's a conservative from California.
Yes,
so that really makes him a liberal.
That right there makes it interesting to begin with. They're kind of at odds with where they live. But you're right. It does kind of make him a liberal anyway.
Yeah, pretty on all of their standards, I would say he's probably pretty liberal.
Yeah.
But he has an interesting topic to talk to us about.
Today, we're talking about climate change, but a little bit different than we've done in the past. Now, we all know, what we see on the news about climate change leading to the end of the world, and we're not going to live another 2 or 3 generations. It's going to be over. Marc argues that while climate change is real, it's not as drastic as it sounds.
What is happening, you beautiful bastards?
I mean, just today, where there's a nuclear power plant that's right there in Central California, Diablo Canyon, right close to me, and people have been trying to shut that thing down forever because they keep saying, Chernobyl. And I'm like, Chernobyl, like from the 70s or from the 80s, and I'm like, there hasn't been any incidents, blah blah blah. So they shut it down, and they're going to replace it with solar plus storage. And then I quickly did the math. I'm like, so you're shutting down the lowest form of CO2 emissions, the lowest, other than hydro.
Yeah.
And you're going to replace it with solar and batteries, which will increase our CO2 footprint by about 800%. How does that save the planet, right?
Well, not only that, California right now is having a massive issue with power, and they just got rid of the best form of power.
Yeah, well, so as of today, like Dianne Feinstein, she said, maybe we ought to, maybe we shouldn't close down this plant. And I'm like, finally, there is one. she's 90 years old, so she's probably saying what some people would tell her. But it's just there's a lot of that. You're right. The leadership is just
Yeah, I actually wonder a lot about what's going on in California and where they get their information to make these decisions, because they're doing 2 things. They're super avoidant of nuclear power, which Riz and I are both big on board with that. We work with nuclear things at work. We both know that it's safe. And if you look historically, the nuclear incidents we had, it's not because nuclear is a problem. It's because the people in charge were. But then you guys in California have a water issue, and they refuse to address it with anything like desalination.
Yeah.
I also think it's just like anything that people are afraid of, right? It comes from a lack of knowledge.
True.
They're either they're getting the information that supports themselves, or it's just they're not knowing how it works and how safe it is, and nuclear power is one of those things.
And I think, these days, because everything has gotten so polarized, it's sort of this confirmation bias, right? So people will go, you know what, I'm going to go look into nuclear, and then they'll read 5 articles from the New York Times. And the New York Times will, of course, say, oh, I can't even say the word nuclear. They scream and panic. And so they go, see, there, it's fact, right? So it just confirms how stupid this is. I'm like, yeah, okay.
We support nuclear power, and I love reading all the things where it's like, oh, this nuclear power. I love reading anything on Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island. I want to read more of it. It's like a morbid fascination with it.
Well, look, France has 70 nuclear power plants.
They are the leaders in the world when it comes to
and they're not out there tooting themselves. They they have the cheapest electricity in all of Europe, have had it for decades. So what the hell, man? What's wrong with this picture?
They literally, if France says something about nuclear power, listen to them.
Yeah,
because they know
they got a good track record. They really do.
Yeah,
it's just they're leading the cutting edge of it, and they have so many, and they run it all the time. Like they know what they're doing.
Well, now you guys are going to make me. When I go home over the next couple of days, I'm going to have to go fill up my car with $750 a gallon gas. So
yeah, see, we're not far behind you, but
yeah, we're up to $5 here, which I know you guys are historically always higher. $750 is crazy. I don't even know if we're at that for diesel over here yet.
Is that the highest you've ever seen? $750?
Oh, it is. It's ridiculous. It's like to fill up a tank of gas, and I have an old beater Subaru, and it cost me $110.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's costing me $100 to fill up any of my vehicles.
Yeah.
It's like, this gets much worse. I'll just walk.
I just read I read a little article today on Biden's response to that. He wrote a scathing letter to oil execs asking them, like, what's going on with your refining? Why aren't you doing it? Because, clearly you're making tons of money. Do your job. Typical Biden stuff where he's like, come on, guys, come on. What are you going to do?
Yeah. And then they had a picture of him climbing out of Air Force Two, the helicopter. And I'm like,
yeah.
He says as he's exiting a gas-fueled helicopter, it's like, come on, seriously. It's either, I have a whole bunch of words that I could use, but I'm like, that's just cluelessness defined, really.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, what more can you say at this point? They know they're out of touch.
Yeah, and I predict November is going to be just a whopper. I think it's going to be something like we've never seen before, which is just like, all right, we let the Trump hate machine take over the world for 2 years, but oh damn, look what we did, and look what's no, we're not going to do this anymore.
And so on that note, though, do you think we're going forward? Are we just going to keep seeing this like flip flop, this seesaw motion? We're tired of this. Like we just can't handle 2 years or 4 years of anyone.
It's funny that you say that because I think why we reached out to you and why I decided to write this book on the climate was because, I've been in this business since the 1999, and I'm a conservative in a 99% liberal industry, and so what? There was no issue. We did good. We knew what we were doing. We didn't overpromise, and so, but the narrative that has gotten out there and is scaring the hell out of children, to be candid, which is another reason that I did this, it's just craziness. So you got the climate deathers on one side and the climate deniers on the other, and most of us are somewhere in between who just want to have a rational discussion, but you're not even allowed to talk about it, right? It's just swallow this science. And so I said, no, I'm coming right down the middle here. And so I think it's going to take someone who doesn't just, like when Obama said, I'm going to be the down the middle president. Come on, someone's actually got to do it. Someone's going to say, I'm going to produce a bill, and if it doesn't get any, other side of the aisle votes, I'm vetoing it. It's going to take that. It's going to take someone who's just got the balls to do it. And so, I don't know. I don't know what happens in 2 years. I'm kind of crossing my fingers that we don't have another Trump debacle, even though, I liked some of the policy directions, but man, I don't know that I can deal with all that drama of just whatever that was. I don't even know how to describe it.
Man. It was so brutal. Like,
it's not even worth anything. It wasn't worth whatever positives you got out of that.
Like the first 2 years, I could deal with I guess it was the first 3 years. Yeah, I could deal with the berate, or like it just the constant abuse. And then once COVID hit, it was like,
I know,
God,
true, right?
Turn off the news.
Yeah, it was just nothing but and what struck me is it was almost like and I'm in California, right? So most people think a different way politically than I do, and but so what? We've always been able to work this out. This has not been that big of an issue until this. And boy, you say that. It was almost like Trump is this trigger hypnotism word, right? You say, well, what about Trump? And everyone, rational people would just, their hair would go on file and they would just start ranting. I'd be like, okay, this is a person I've known you for 20 years and I don't know who he's talking to me right now.
Yeah.
It's just like they go from 0 to 200 in the snap. Yeah. And I'm like, well,
I was at a family outing, or I think it was a Christmas party. And one of my wife's aunts said that she voted for Trump or whatever. And one of the other family members, like just going off of that, exploded. And we're like, wait a minute. She just said she voted for him. Like, she's allowed to have an opinion. We can have this. This is America. She can say these things.
Yeah.
She didn't say she wanted you to die.
That's how they're interpreting it, though. It really is. As we know a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, and like anti-Trumpers look at Trumpers as if they're intentionally out to kill everyone who doesn't vote for Trump. It's a level of madness I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just where the country's headed, man.
Well, I hope we find our way out of it, and I think it's going to take more people committed to purposely going more towards the middle and just.
I think it'll take the normal people, because I think the mass majority of us fall in the middle. I think it'll take one of us finally being like, oh, I'm fucking done with this, and doing what needs to be done. You know what I mean? That's what it is, man. When you're just because most of the time we sit in the middle and we're like, wow, they're fucked up. Oh, yeah, they're fucked up too. Stand right here. And then finally it's just gonna be like, dude, I'm done with this. I can't handle this bullshit anymore.
It's just so true. It's just true.
Now, you had mentioned you kind of sat in the middle on a couple issues, specifically regarding your book. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
For one, what is your book? What's the title of the book? What's it about?
So here, let me do a quick dodge, and you can see it. It's called. Oh, you can't see it. It's called.
We give us a picture later. We'll throw it up.
Okay. It's called Climaturity. So I just invented a word because I was like, man, we need a mature and reasonable and transparent discussion about the climate, because for being in it for so long, I know some of the solutions. I know some of the problems. I know where the holes are. I just know it, and it's because I've lived it, and I've lived on the front line of this discussion. We're not going to be dead by Thursday. I promise. I promise everyone, we're not going to die from the climate by Thursday or Saturday, guaranteed, right? And so, I teach at a college, San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and these seniors, so they're 22, 23 years old, getting into the workforce, young adults, and they're like, this is, they've just been bombarded with these messages like, I don't know if I can have kids because the world's going to be dead. I'm like, what? I mean, but genuinely feeling this. I'm like, so as one of the first brand guys in the solar industry, man, I take that super personal, because I was like, how did we screw that up? I mean, honestly, how did we screw that up? That is the exact scared kids is just uncool. It's just uncool. And there's a strategy. And I mean, look, this is a strategy for, and I found the blueprint for it from Columbia University, right? The bastion of all climate paranoia, Columbia. They wrote a blueprint. Here's how to label people who don't think like you. They can't be a skeptic. You have to call them a climate denier, right?
Right.
And, just like the Holocaust denier, right? So no, this is no secret here, but there's a blueprint. I mean, and it kind of gave me a cringe. I go, this is actually super familiar, right? Isn't that what we've done in the past with race issues? Here's a blueprint for how to label and show disdain for people who don't think like you. And then they gave that to all the media outlets. And then their law school is now trying to prosecute people or trying to prosecute companies for having, too much CO2 emissions. So it's just madness. And so, between my own experience, between what I'm seeing as the results of decades of just climate death narratives, and I said, you know what? I have some questions. I'm in this business, and I'm not even allowed to have this discussion. Like, people won't talk to me. Like, I will say, well, don't you think about the science? Isn't it weird that all of the climate discussion is based on 45 made up scenarios with computer models that are made up, and you hit enter, and everyone's calling crystal ball predictions science? I go, isn't that weird? I mean, I'm an engineer. If I had done that, I would have failed. Right. So they're like, it's science. It's close enough. Shut the hell up. Just believe it. So that's what started me down this path. And I'm like, I'm not buying this. So I just said, I'm going to research this. And actually, when I started this, I was expecting to kind of find the holy grail. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm just ignorant. Maybe if I read enough science, maybe if I read the 4,000 page IPCC reports, which is, oh my gosh, that's just a painful thing. Maybe if I do that, the magic bullet will show up and I'll have this enlightening moment. And actually, at the end of this process, I'm actually, I feel worse about that. I actually feel like this is a really carefully constructed story that's been being built over decades. Having said that, I actually believe that climate change is a real thing. I think that man has had and it is having an influence on it that's still, to be determined how much of it. And I think it's something that needs, some direct attention. But the path that we're on with this hysteria and the denialism on both sides is not getting us anywhere close.
No, well, that's the problem nowadays, right? Like, climate change, I think it's a real thing, but I think a lot of what we're dealing with isn't even, for me, it's all America, right? We hear about what America has done wrong, what America needs to do. We can do everything they say, and none of it will matter if the rest of the world doesn't change a damn bit of anything. Like, you go see pictures of their beaches, you'll never get in that water.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? I mean, that's part of it is, and if you look at the number, I purposely dug into the numbers of this because no one ever wants, if you're a true believer, you will never dig into the math. You'll never dig into the cost. So, McKinsey, very well respected consulting company, right? They're on the front edge of the climate discussion. They came up with a number for what it would take just to decarbonize, and that's not reversing CO2 growth, right? That's just stopping the growth over time. So this net zero, what's the price tag of that? $272 trillion, right?
Nice.
So global GDP is 90. So this is 4 times that, or 3 times that, right? So
you're never going to get there.
Well, and then if you continue to do the math, like who's going to pay for it? Are the developing countries going to pay for it? Of course not. So the chances are that the 5 or 6 highest GDP countries in the world will pay for it and get, who's number 1? Us. Who's number 2? China. And when I did the math and I looked at the working people in US, and when I did the math, the total was about $13,000 each for each of us per year, forever, right? So
forever.
And that's like starting now. And there's a reason you don't hear these numbers because they're unbelievable, right? So imagine, just think of, think of all the things that happened with COVID where people go, you know what? I'm 2 years away from retirement. Boom, early retirement. I'm out of the workforce. Who needs this crap? So imagine if you're starting a company and I'm a startup entrepreneur. So, why the hell would I do that if I know the first 13 cents of every dollar I'm going to make is going to go? It's not even a real thing. It's an insurance policy, right? Because these are things that you're going to put it into a fund and they're going to fund solutions over the next 30 to 40 years. Man, it's just not going to happen. It just will not happen, nor should it. It's a stupid idea. And that's just to decarbonize. At some point, we actually have to make CO2 go lower. That's just to make it, to even it out. So anyway, I wrote this book because I want to have this talk. I want to have a dialogue. I want reasonable people to sit there and say, what are we missing here? What can we do as a country to help try to solve this problem that isn't going to just make us crazy?
Then, like you and I, we were talking beforehand on the fact that they're trying to push out nuclear power, which is increasing the carbon output anyways. So they're not even adopting systems that would be better for what they're looking for. Yeah.
So for example, there's maybe you guys have heard of this Project Drawdown. Maybe you've heard of this nonprofit organization. They have gone through and they've come up with an entire list of solutions. It's a great resource. So they've got 75, 80 solutions, and then they've put costs associated with each one of these, and cost, but also potential effectiveness, right? Which is CO2 reduction or CO2 effect, right? And they went and they produced this thing. So I used that number, and you can go on their website, projectdrawdown.org, and I took those numbers, I put it into a spreadsheet, and I did it I sorted it dollar per CO2 reduced, and I sorted it. And out of the 75 items that were there, electric vehicles were 67. Meaning, and hybrids were 60. Electric EVs were 68, and hybrids were 67. So the first power one was 33, which was distributed rooftop solar, which means that there are 32 other things that are way easier to implement and cheaper that would have a greater effect. Things like, hey, don't cut down those trees to put a solar factory, it's common sense type stuff. Or, hey, maybe don't dig up that farm to put a blacktop, right? A lot of these sort of fall into the duh category. And so when I do that, and I included it in here, I was just like, man, we're just chasing, this is just, honestly, politicians chasing jobs. It's just, that's what it comes down to. There's so many different ways to do it. The best thing that happened to climate change, I hate to say it because it just sounds so awful, was COVID. because in 1 year, we dropped, in 2020, our emissions in the US dropped by 11%, 15 in transportation. And it's the greatest drop in US history since, right? So between 50 years of great aggressive climate policies, emissions keep going up. 1 year of conservation, yes, it was awful, but we achieved in 1 year what we haven't been able to do in 50. What's wrong with this picture? I mean, come on.
And a lot of that's going to stick too, because now so many people can work remotely. Now you've got me wondering too, because obviously we hear all the stuff coming from I don't know, maybe climate fanatics. I don't know what to call them. The people who are really, really big on climate change and the extreme dangers we're in. I think we can all agree, like you mentioned, that climate change is happening. But what kind of danger are we actually in compared to what they are telling us we're in? Because if we did like a scale of 1 to 10, they're telling me it's a 12. Like what's a little bit more realistic then, based on what you're looking at?
Yeah, so I have this conversation. It's a very short conversation, as you can imagine. Right? Climate emergency. I'm going to focus on that word emergency because I've had an emergency before. I've had, an emergency with myself, with my kids. When emergencies happen, shit stops, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
The ambulance comes, you get wheeled away in a gurney, you go to the doctor. If the doctor says, this is what's going on, you either got to have an operation, you don't question it, you do it, right? So stuff happens. That's an emergency. So when everyone tells me it's a climate emergency, I'm like, so why haven't you stopped using fossil fuels, right? I mean, you're wearing clothes, you're eating food, you've got a computer, you've got a phone, you've got some sort of transportation, you've got a house. These are all made with fossil fuels. Why haven't you given it up? Why haven't you sold everything and given up your child's future? They're not going to college because you're going to go live in a yurt up on a mountain somewhere. Why haven't you done that? In fact, no one has done that, right? Do you know anyone who has done that? Of course not. It's a stupid idea. So climate emergency, the first thing I do, I call them. I'm like, dude, where's the ambulance, right? If it's an emergency, why, so I'm going to pick on Biden again, right? We had the Glasgow conference, the IPCC conference in Glasgow. So Biden gets on Air Force One, fuels it up with jet fuel, flies all the way to Europe, stops in Paris, has a 20 limo motorcade through Paris because why wouldn't you if you could, right? It's awesome. You go through the town, they stop the whole city and you go through there and you see Eiffel Tower and you do your photo ops and then you get back on your plane, fuel it up, fly to Glasgow. Then you stare at the camera and you go, climate change is an existential crisis. Click. And then you fly back on Air Force One. I mean, the carbon footprint of that stupid thing alone was, ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, if he was really concerned about it, he goes, I'm zooming this thing for 5 minutes and I just saved us 20 tons of CO2. But of course, so that's the first thing is climate emergency. The second thing is the solutions that are being proposed, like net zero, for example, or decarbonizing or replacing electricity at a coal or a gas fueled power plant with something like solar. We've done this sort of fake math, and I call it the avoided donut fallacy, right? So let's say you go to a doctor and he says you're 100 pounds overweight and you got to lose that weight, right? So that's CO2, right? We've got too much CO2 in there, so you got to lose that 100 pounds, and you go, I'm used to eating 20 donuts a day. So I'm going to cut that 20 donuts down to 5. So I save 15, right? So if I do 15 and I divide that by 100 pounds, I'm skinny in 4 months. And then you step back and you go, but wait a sec, you're still 5 donuts a day fatter, right? So the only thing that I can guarantee is that you're fatter at the end of this exercise. So how does that work? So all these things where we do this sort of CO2 replacement shell game where, well, if you do solar and replace this, but you don't ever replace it, you just add it. Nothing ever gets decommissioned. If you put solar on your house, they're not over at the power plant going, let's see, Joe, all right, click, we're clicking off that gas, right? It doesn't happen. It never happens. You're just adding stuff. So the only thing I can guarantee at the end of all this decarbonization, it's going to take us 30 to 50 years to do this, is that total CO2 will be higher. Okay? You're 5 donuts a day fatter. And the math is really simple. And I mean, this is it just defies logic that this is the way it is. Same with EVs, right? So I mean, an EV coming off the production line has about twice the CO2 emissions embedded into that than a regular combustion vehicle. The best thing you can do is just don't drive, man. Take the bus, take the subway.
Well, that's the thing. So Jerry and I are both car guys, and we always found it funny when people are driving Priuses or fully electric vehicles. And it's like, yeah, what's your house powered off of? Coal. Huh, that's good. Like, so you just made the emissions worse.
Yeah. Have you guys driven Teslas or any of these other things?
Yeah, I haven't driven a Tesla, but I've driven electrics and hybrids.
I've driven hybrids, but I've never actually driven anything electric. Like the closest thing was a hybrid Prius where I could run on electricity only.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the closest I've come to it.
You know, I would say as car guys, get into a Tesla and drive that thing. It is badass, right? It's a great piece of tech, but it's responsive. I mean, holy cow! Talk about, you know, you go from 0 to 60 in this ridiculous amount of time. You actually have to push yourself back in the seat because you're going to, you know, and it's awesome. It's a great vehicle. It's got all kinds of gadgets, but it's not climate salvation. It's just a really cool piece of tech.
If you talk to any car guy, who they probably know more about the efficiency and like that, the actual emissions, than anyone, you know, the answer, if you want to stick with vehicles, is diesel. Unless you're going to put a nuclear power plant inside of a car, which I don't think we're doing anytime soon.
Like Back to the Future, right? So.
You know, if you had a diesel engine is the way you're going to go, because you can get away from actual fossil fuels with a diesel engine. You can't do that with a gas.
Yeah,
not fully.
You know, so I think you know, I mean, this is not. I joke with people. I'll say, you know, some people will say, well, what's the answer to this? And I say, well, first of all, you know, natural solutions. You know, trees suck out carbon from the air. That's what they're built to do. So maybe a massive reforestation project where all of our national parks become carbon sinks. Probably not a bad idea. Right? We could do it at a fraction of the cost, and we could start lowering total CO2 today without spending 30 to 50 years and multiple trillions on trying to spin the world backwards on its power grid. we don't like what's happened now. I know gas has gotten us out of the caves, and you know, it's been really awesome, but you know, cancel culture, we don't like it now. So reset, let's start over. Well, man, that's just not going to happen. You know, I started my solar career in Africa. Right. So Africa, where there's no electricity and a farmer needed to pump water out of a well to water his calves. Hugely awesome. Right. It changes their life. If they're trying to get their entire country out of poverty and you show up with solar, they're like, dude, where's the rest of it? Why can't we have what you had? Why can't we have what got you out of poverty? And we're like, no. We're America. We know better. We know what you need. You don't know what you need. We know what you need. So we're going to give you power that works a third of the time, and you're going to thank us.
So it sounds like you had a decent amount of experience with solar power then.
Yeah, so I spent probably 2 decades in solar. So from 1999, and then I worked in EV infrastructure for a bit, and then energy storage. So I know my way around both the markets and the products in these areas.
So, I mean, solar seems like a great thing on someone's house. It doesn't seem like a great thing in a field.
You know, I think solar is great at what it does. You know, great on your house. It can work in a field. I don't, you know, I like solar. People in my, you know, my old colleagues now are upset with me for for saying this kind of stuff, but I'm like, there's nothing wrong with solar. But, you know, it has its appropriate place in the energy mix, which is what, 2 to 5%. It's really good. It was always meant to be a plug-in to the side of the grid and to help ease tensions. But there's also plenty of problems that come with it. Okay, so like here in California, right? Let's beat on California a little bit. There are plenty of times where we have so much solar electricity we can't use it. So the grid operator tells us, you know what, guys, turn it off. Literally, it's called curtailment. So they just say shut it down. So you shut it down. So we've got too much. And then there are other times when they don't want to curtail it, but you know what? Let's send it off to Arizona because they could use it. So we send it somewhere else. So you got Californians paying for solar, and we're either shutting it down, which makes no sense, or we're sending it somewhere else.
But then we hear that the hydropower plant at Lake Mead is not going to be able to put out power, and you guys are going to be screwed anyways.
Yeah. Well, that's because I think that's because of water, right? So
yeah.
But so look, solar is absolutely it works. It's reliable. There's so many good things about it. I guess I have a difficulty when solar becomes climate salvation, and that if we don't solarize the world tomorrow, then we're all going to die. I just sit there and I go, man, that's lunacy. I did the math. Okay, global capacity for solar. What I said was in 2050 the world needs this much power. Here's how much we can produce per year. And I think when I just did the math, and these are big numbers, quadrillion kilowatt hours. I think I said it would take us 178 years at current capacity to build enough energy to meet our needs in 2050. And that's still only a third of the day because it's solar. So 178 years, right? So of course, no one ever does that math because it sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, we just take what we're told.
Right. So look, I think it all has a place. Solar has a place. Windmills have a place. It has to, but the idea that fossil fuels are going away, you can't make one solar panel, you can't make one windmill, you can't make one nuclear power plant without plenty of oil and gas.
Now that brings up one thing I was thinking about while you were talking about this. When we're talking about fossil fuels, it is a finite resource. Now I don't know what the actual numbers are because depending on who you ask, you get a different answer on how big that resource is, how big the reserves are.
Yeah,
I think it's big, but I don't really know. So how do you approach that from your angle when we're using up a finite resource to fuel the way that we live and our current climate change?
Yeah, well, we're replacing one finite resource with another. Okay, so what's the diff, right? So electric vehicle batteries, lithium, right? So I mean, you're ripping up mountains to go mine lithium. To build solar panels, you're bulldozing mountains to get the minerals that you need. The silver and the other minerals. So those are all finite, so it's all finite. We're just trading one for the other. And what makes it worse, unfortunately, with solar is that almost all of the solar modules are made in China, right? So let's see, we want to be free from the influence of Russia on oil and gas. So let's pin our hopes on China. And then we actually have a trade law that prevented them from doing what China's going to do, which is gouge the crap out of everything and cheat. And they did, and we can prove it. And the Department of Justice said, we're going after China. And Joe Biden said, you know what? Let's give them a pass. Come on, guys. They're not really that bad. And so you're replacing one with another. My view is the fastest way to slow down emissions is with conservation programs. If you started paying people to save electricity, if you started paying people to save water, which is what I'm doing with my startup Liquidate, watch what happens, right? When we wanted people to use solar in California, we paid them. This is not rocket science, right? So you want people to use 20% less electricity, pay them. And so imagine that program that would roll out from the government saying, hey, we're going on a massive conservation program. We're going to spend about a 30th of the budget that we have for all this other stuff. And we're going to keep trees. We're going to reforest. We're going to use all the dozens of natural solutions that are available as natural carbon sinks. And we're going to conserve. And we're going to try that for 5 years and watch what happens to overall CO2 levels, not emissions, overall CO2 levels.
You can't do that though. That money's for someone else, like their friends.
Well, yeah. So my view is we're replacing one, depletable resource with another. Lithium is already a problem, and it's only going to get worse. So for anyone who thinks, I really wish people could watch how some of these greener energies are made, because the first step is take that bulldozer and mow down that mountain, right? It's about as black as you can get, right? It's just
if you haven't seen the lithium mines, they're pretty horrendous.
Yeah, biomass is just a fancy word for cutting down forests and burning them. So how is that clean?
Nuclear power, everyone.
It's not. It's just so it's that's again part of what I want to do here is just have this dialogue. Let's at least put it all on the table. no one is telling us the complete truth. No one. It's just fascinating to me. All of my the people in the solar business, we're guilty of doing the same thing that oil has done. And I hate to say that, but we're going to tell you our version of the truth, right? I talk to a lot of people and they go, solar is the cheapest electricity there is, right? I see these articles every day. Solar is the cheapest electricity by far. And I say, well, wait a sec. How is that true at midnight tonight when the sun's down? Oh, well, not then, right? So the caveat is when it works. But in fact, at midnight tonight, all the money in the world couldn't power one light bulb. So I would argue that most of the time, renewable energy is the most expensive in the world because it doesn't work most of the time. So I think we need to be having these discussions, right? A responsible energy plan that incorporates all of this. We have to sort of shut out the deathers on one side and the deniers on the other, and come up with the real plan. Fossil fuels are not going anywhere. In my lifetime, in your lifetime, in my kids' lifetime, they're here to stay. You can't do any energy transition without them. You can't live without them. And so, it's
the only way I see us getting rid of fossil fuels is a absolutely massive technological breakthrough, right? If we find out that some hugely available resource has power source that we didn't know about, which is doubtful unless we're
like nuclear fusion, for example.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, so if that happens, all right, fine. I guess everyone's going. And even then, because I don't think electric cars, to me, with where we are with electric cars right now, I mean, even the Teslas, you're seeing Teslas now where the batteries are having to be swapped out. And the car dealers are going, what do we do with these?
Yeah.
The old batteries, they don't know.
They never really planned that far ahead with it.
Well, you can't, they're not recyclable.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just, you get this hunk of shit that you, so they just keep on their floor now and they go, someone take this. Like, I don't know.
Back to the Future, it was Mr. Fusion, right? Where he stuck banana peels in there and cigarette butts and they created flying cars, right? Something like that.
I mean, shit, if that worked, that'd be great, but I don't see that happening.
Well, and so my view is let's continue the energy transition. We have been slowly evolving our grids over time. Let's have a realistic and transparent dialogue. I'm all about transparency. And so, what bothers me most about, one of the things that bothers me most about the climate discussion is, I'll just use this as an example, but not as an example of my politics or anything like that. When our last president, they accused him of treason, right, with this Ukrainian phone call. Man, you couldn't go for a month. That's all you heard about. It was on your phone. It was on every tweet. It was on everything. When we decided we wanted to communicate it, boy, we did, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yet, I've never seen a group of climate scientists in front of Congress. I've never seen that. I've never seen it on a public display explaining why future-looking predictive models are the same things as crap that I can measure in a lab. Why, so the science, so it's fascinating to me. Why hasn't that ever happened? And you know why? Because it wouldn't take long to figure out how, as I said earlier, how painstakingly constructed this whole thing is. So look, there's plenty of science that has been occurring. We can measure stuff in the past, but the idea that we're going to take stuff we know about and then try to figure out, build computer models that accurately predict the Earth, not only from the past, but also move that into the future, and then bet trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on it, is fantasy, right? I mean, so, and I always say, imagine, we're not scientists, but imagine, tomorrow they said, all right, I want you to go build a computer model for oceans. And you go, well, which one? All of them, all of the oceans. So you have to predict their CO2 absorption. You have to predict their temperatures. You have to predict their depth. You have to predict all of these things, not only from the past, so you have to go get real measurements, but now I want you to predict those into the future. And the end prize is multiple trillions of dollars that are going to be spent because of your answer. So
literally impossible.
That's like oceans. Now, what about clouds? Like, oh, there's a cloud there. Oh, it went away. So you have to predict all clouds, all everywhere, over all of history and their effect on the, on the greenhouse gas effect. So go. And how do you know if you're right? Like, if you model oceans, how do you know if you're right? Do you take a tape measure and go all the way down to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean and go, oh, I was 6 inches off, right? So they do their best. I think it's come a long way in the past 20 years, but the idea that they are sufficient for planning, I mean, we're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars of public expense is.
And I think we've learned that, I mean, if anything, we know that money is what drives everything right now.
Of course it is.
And in the past, I don't know, 10 years, I would say, I think it's gotten very obvious to most people who are watching the political game that they learned that they can't get away with what they used to get away with. And it's a lot harder. And that's why you're seeing, I think, this like complete polarization of everything, because everything's out in the open. They're trying to pull the games that they pulled in the 80s and 90s, and people are calling it bullshit right off the bat. And so, it's I think politics is learning, which is why it's so painful for us. And it's all about money. Everything's about money right now.
And Marc, ridiculous. Like you had mentioned, the transparency thing, which you're a fan of, so are we. Politicians have never been a fan of that, but now it's becoming something that they're forced to present people with. Because the information's out there now. And it's funny that you mentioned the climate models, because we've grown up over the last 20, 30 years watching all these climate models come out. And I don't think that I can even recall one where it turned out to be true. It was always like, oh, it's happening 30 years faster, or it turns out we have another 100 years. They're never what they said they would be.
Yeah, so they're always wrong. But people also don't understand what the models are. There's a physical part, which is how is the world been reacting, right? So ocean temperatures, ground temperatures, and stuff you can actually measure. Then there's the sociological part, which is gross domestic product, company growth, renewable energy adoption rates, right? And so they just created 45 different scenarios. They're all made up. They're smart scenarios, but not one of them is right, because they actually weren't supposed to be right. They started out as a way to frame different discussions so we could start looking at this. And then over time and lots of political pressure, the IPCC analysts were pressured to taking these extreme versions and now take the most extreme scenario, and they're calling it, well, that's business as usual. This is definitely going to happen if we continue down our path, which is, of course, just all made up. So, I look at 20th century, right? All of the 1900s, the Earth average temperature rose by a degree. Okay, so we did quite well. We cured thousands of diseases. The human population doubled. Global GDP went through the roof. We can feed now the world 100 times, not 100 times over, multiple times over. Distribution is one thing, but right, we actually did quite well. So the idea that if temperatures go up by a degree or 1.5 degrees, the idea that the Himalayas are going to suddenly melt overnight and cause this tsunami and cause Tibetans to run for cover, it's just pure science fiction. It's like Sharknado science fiction, right? It's like bad science fiction. It's like, come on, people, it's just never going to happen. So there's plenty of, our history shows this, that a little bit of warming helps the planet. I mean, the Ice Age killed way more people and things than anything that's happened with global warming. So by far. So now I'm not saying that, untethered global warming is a good thing. Of course it's not. But my point is, it's not hinged in facts. And so the climate models, I get into this discussion all the time. People hate me, but I say, man, I got a lot of, I'm raising my hand. I got a lot of questions about climate models. Why? You're asking me to spend, okay, I'll personalize it. I have to write a $13,000 check tomorrow, right? And if my wife is working, she has to write one too. That's $26,000 out of my house. And my son's got 4 years to go to college. That means I'm starting to look at that and go, well, I'd love to send you to Cal Berkeley, but you know what? I gotta spin the world backwards. So you can go the second year, right? Every other year you'll go to college, right? That's real money. So you're handing me the bill. Damn right, I'm going to ask some questions about it. I am going to ask some questions about it. And if you can't prove it, and if you can't make a case for it, then I'm going to raise my hand and throw throw a stink about it, and that's
So
kind of where I've been.
what do you say about, like, it seems we're seeing more and more of these disasters that are, and it's stuff that we haven't seen before, that's popping up almost like a monthly basis.
Yeah, and so in my next book, when I do the research, I can't speak too intelligently about this. What I've read at a very cursory level is, first of all, the dollar value of damages has gone down by hundreds of percent in terms of dollars per disaster. And why? Because of that, we've adapted. And the example I always used is, New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina. I actually was working with a solar company that went into the lower Ninth Ward right after Katrina and put solar on a bunch of houses. And at the time we thought we were being so righteous. And I remember, now I'm thinking back, maybe they just could have used some food or some security guards, because man, this was a wasteland. Yes, we felt good, we were being solar righteous, but they probably could have used some security or some tangent. But thousands of people were killed by Hurricane Katrina because the levee system broke, right? So now fast forward to 2021, Hurricane Ida hits New Orleans, not quite as powerful as Katrina, but still Category 4 hurricane. 100 people were killed. Okay, why? Because the levees held. So we adapted, we learned. If you're worried, ask anyone this question, right? You have beachfront, you're rich, you have beachfront property in Miami, you're 20 feet from the ocean, and if over years that 20 feet becomes 10 feet, are you just going to stay there? No, you're going to probably sell that house, build another one a mile inland, and you're good. So we adapt. And so the idea that we're just going to stand there while the earth melts over 50 years and we're just going to be sucking our thumbs is just sort of a stupid idea. It's not going to happen. So we've adapted. So it's a long answer to your question, but what I've seen is that you can't show a direct correlation between more weather activity or more, I guess, climate disaster activities over time. You can't connect that with CO2 emissions. And the damages, the money value of that has gone dramatically down too. So, but that's my opinion based on some stuff I've read. So there's probably some people who come in there and say, hey, here's the actual dollar value.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't worry about the dollar value so much as it just seems like, as today it's CO2, it used to be CO, and before that it was, CFCs and all that shit. But it seems like as that's gone up, the amount of bullshit that we're dealing with on the weather front has gone up as well.
But I wonder, I don't know. And so here's an interesting thing, everything's happened since 1980, right? So all of a sudden,
it's our magical date.
Right. So
I swear that's when we started really keeping good records on a lot of things.
Well, hey, what else happened in 1980? The internet. So we now have, I could probably figure out your personal body temperature over the past 6 months if I wanted to really dig into it, right? So we are now inundated with data. So it happened in 1980. So when people say, it's the first time in 25 million years that we're at this temperature, I'm like, really? Any people from 25 million years ago? You're out there counting ice cores and sawing trees in half and counting rings, versus we have real-time temperature data about every single dang thing in the world right now. Don't you think there's a gap in our understanding of data, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I think our ability to process all that data is now, it's just way behind. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's something to look at. I'm not saying that the data is wrong. I'm just saying we just don't have all the information. We don't have the ability to process all that information like we did. It's still new.
So when we're talking about the topics that you covered in your book, what were give us a couple of your biggest takeaways from the research that you did to write it, and did it help evolve your opinions, and what were the biggest takeaways you had from that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that really drove home is, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, that produces they're a group of the United Nations, and there's thousands of analysts, but they are not scientists. And so most people, so they produce these reports. The last one just came out in April, 3,700 pages, yowza, right? So no one, who the hell is going to read that? The politicians don't even read that. And I've tried to get through it, and then they produce all these little Cliff Notes versions of these, which is what some people read. So they're not scientists. They don't produce any primary science. They don't do research. Their job is to assimilate. Their job is to assimilate. So, and one of their goals is to present a unified front. Well, okay, so if your goal is to present a unified front, then I'm going to make sure that whoever disagrees with me is not invited to that damn meeting, right? So there's hundreds of scientists who are out there saying, come on, guys, we were kicked out, or they didn't listen to us at all. And so it's a multi-year process of this. So they're not scientists. They produce what they're politically appointed by governments all over the world. They produce conclusions that their government wants them to produce. So that's the first thing. It's not science. They're analyzing science. So I think that was really important, because most people consider that the Bible. That when I get into these discussions, people will sort of flap that around at me. Yeah, but 3,700 pages says you're wrong. I'm like, no, it actually doesn't say that. But these are analysts, right? These are, this is a political analyst. If they say something that they don't like, then they get fired. And as an example of that, when people go, oh, that's just not true, I said, really? So do you think during the Donald Trump era that if some analyst was out there saying, oh my God, global warming is going to kill us all, and was producing reports, do you think that person would have longevity, right? So, no, he would have gotten fired, or she would have gotten fired. So it's a politically motivated piece of information. The other thing was, I think the second thing is how carefully crafted the story is. Okay, the 1.5 degrees number that we keep hearing about, right? Like, or 2 degrees, where if we can't get it below 2 degrees, Armageddon happens. As I have found, and that's going to be the subject of my next book, is those are made up numbers. There's no science that says that at all, right? So the 1.5 to 2 degrees number, made up. All of the 45 scenarios, made up. Isn't one of them that's true? All of the computers models that we use to generate all the information, all wrong every single time.
So are you saying that's made up because it's one of the computer generated models, or you like looked at it and you're like, yeah, no, that was just someone pulled that number out of their ass? So
the technique they used is this thing called scenario planning. Okay, and so and Dutch Shell did this back in the 70s. They actually spearheaded this, and I worked for Shell for a while. So it was a very, very clever way to do it. Rather than try to predict the future, they said, let's just craft some scenarios that potentially could happen.
It's right? just like watching a hurricane tracker, and they have like the 57 different ways that the hurricane could go.
It's basically a game of what if.
Yeah.
It's a big game of what if. And it was designed
odds are one's right.
And when they first did this, all of those scenarios had an equal chance of it happening or not, right? There was no claim that, hey, scenario 33 is greater probability than scenario 45, right? It was just a way to put it all in front of them and say, all right, let's say that, everyone turns to coal, and then we double the amount of cars, and we have a recession. That's scenario X. What are all the bad things that could possibly happen, right? So that's the game. So you do that. So it's made up, right? And then you put then you go back and you say, all right, I'm going to put in stuff that I can measure, temperatures, CO2 levels. I'm going to put that into my model, and then I'm going to guess. All right, I'm going to guess that France's GDP is going to be 2.7% in 2025. Click, right? And then you do that with the next, and next, and then you hit enter, and then boom, there's an answer, right? And so, but what has changed over time is the analysts have not been allowed to just be impartial. They've been pressured to pick scenarios, and the ones that they have picked have been the most extreme ones. So that's now considered business as usual, as they call it. But they're still all made up. Even the business as usual scenario is not a true. It's not a true indication of what's actually going on.
I mean, to me, if anyone who's watched anything political or anything in the government for the last 4 years, we know we can trust them without any doubt in our minds.
Well, so what bothers me is it feels like it all just smoke and mirrors, because look, I'm going to go back to the basic. I think it's a problem. I think All of this fear mongering, scared kids, uncool. Sorry, folks. Anyone who thinks that scared kids is a good thing, they put them on magazine covers. She's an activist. Bullshit. She's a scared kid. I got kids. If you scared my kid like that, you and I are going to have a talk somewhere, maybe behind that woodshed. You're not going to do that, and I won't let you. Right. So I'm amazed that more adults aren't saying that. Like, shut the hell up. What are you doing? So that's just uncool. Right. So, that's the currency. That's the only really result of all these decades of climate panic has been scared children and then really ineffective and expensive policies. And so I think it's a real problem. We have to tackle it head on. And we actually have to have a transparent discussion so we can come up with solutions that we can actually afford. Just before I forget it, I read an article today in the Wall Street Journal. So there is a climate czar. It's not John Kerry, but there's I forget who it is. And so I don't have that detail. But big tech, right? So social media they're starting to censor people who don't, they're starting to kick people off who don't tout the climate death party line, right? So if you go in there, like for what I'm doing is saying, are you sure this is real? Boom, I'm off the platform.
Which to me is concerning.
Our policy people are saying, hell yeah, we're all in favor of that because we have to know the facts. So you've got
because they're
other analysts going, well, wait a sec. So you've got social media, arguably the most effective and broad-ranging communication platform ever, who is now in cahoots with the government about a certain narrative. I don't care what that's about. I already don't like it. I don't care if it's about Taco Tuesday, right? It's a bad idea.
See, we've talked about this, and I feel like no matter what way you grab that, you're gonna get cut. Because like if we decide to do this censor thing, right, and they side with the left and how they want to do things, anyone on the right's going to get silenced, and then we lose out on those opinions, and that to me that's bad, right? Even if you're losing out on the crazies, but if you don't have any sort of regulation, you're going to have those crazies in midstream as well, and now we've just got a shit show going on.
And they tend to be the loudest voice as well, the crazies.
But so what do you do? And to me, I'm not for censorship on the internet. Like, all right, even if I don't agree with them, I still want them to have a voice so I can have a conversation with them. Because if you just tell them to shut the fuck up and that they're stupid, then they're going to go on their merry way thinking what they already think, and nothing's going to change.
They'll also go, see, you're pissing off the right people. That's
exactly.
So, if I take this all the way out and I just say, if we're all just to hell with it, I would make a case, and this is just me ranting. So take it for what it's worth. There's no analysis behind this. It's just my own crazy thoughts. So, I look at right, the Google, Facebook, all of the social media platforms, Twitter. I would, if they are now going to be in charge and anointed by the government to be the arbiters of climate truth, then they now own the problem. Okay, they own this problem, which means that they have to also own the solution. I would argue that those companies have one of the most egregious CO2 footprints in the world with all of their server farms, and it's made worse because they have built products. Let me play the pure victim here, like it's so popular these days. They've made stuff that I'm addicted to. It's not my fault, right? It's not my fault that I'm checking, Twitter 20 times a day. It's their fault because they got such an awesome platform.
They've also normalized the technology, like cell phones, for example, smartphones. They've normalized it to the extent that if you don't have it, you're now at a disadvantage professionally and personally.
Well, I would take it, yes, but also take it to the extreme. So let's say that, okay, so now they own the dialogue because the government says they are the clearinghouse of climate truth, or whatever that's worth. So they have to own the solution. So the way to do that is just charge the shit out. So every account that gets set up, Twitter has to pay a dime. Every tweet costs them a nickel. Every single piece of information that gets pumped out using their platform, because think about it, right? Every time someone tweets something, some CO2 is being spit up into the air. If they're the biggest ones in the world and they now own the entire climate discussions, it's not a tax, right? It's just a surcharge. It's just if they're now the arbiters of truth, they have to be the arbiters of the solutions. And this is the way to do it. So imagine when that rippled through all the social media. Just charge the hell out of no more fake accounts, because I wouldn't generate it because it would cost me $5 to generate an email just so I could buy those shoes that I'll never use again. Right? Right?
Mark Zuckerberg would literally shut down.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you're going to take this all the way out, take it all the way out. So, and watch what happens then. These guys are the biggest CO2 polluters in the history of the planet.
See, I think if you take that like crypto or any of like these massive servers that we have, and you take them, what are they doing? They're heat sinks, right?
Yep.
Use them, use the heat from them, make steam, run a generator. There, we have power again.
Recycle all the energy that they're burning up.
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean,
mining Bitcoin and making power. It's amazing.
Well, that was the other thing. I read an article today about they're starting to shut down Bitcoin because, hey, maybe it's not as clean as we thought it was because it takes.
It was never clean. We had a guy come on here and he tried to tell us that it wasn't bad for the environment because like they were grabbing it off. I was like, so many people in China are doing power scavenging. It's like bullshit. It's some fucking dude in his basement running that thing 24/7.
Yeah, I think it's funny too that they talk about how Bitcoin is not as clean as we thought it was. That was never its intent.
No,
it's a decentralized currency, so people can pay each other without being beholden to a government. No one cared that it was clean or dirty. That didn't even come up until people were like, "Hey, where's all the graphics cards?"
Yeah, right. I call that the climate change attribution train. Right. We just throw these days. All you got to do. I hate to draw this parallel, but politicians have learned very quickly that. If you want to get someone to pay for it, just throw the word racism in there and all of a sudden everyone starts to freak out. And right. So that's happened with climate change now. Right. So all you got to do is say, oh man, you're hurting the climate. And everyone starts to look around and right. So now Bitcoin was, well, when they start taking arrows from whether or not it's valid or not, they say, well, it's better for the climate. So that gave them another 6 months of operating.
That's a fair point. And nowadays, there's all kinds of these issues that keep coming up where, things like producing and distributing oil, that in itself, that's going to lead to problems with carbon. But the big issue that we run into is pollution, things like oil spills. We're not really doing a whole lot to mitigate this. We're just charging people.
Yeah.
So we're not solving problems. They're collecting revenue, and I don't even know what they're doing with it.
Yeah, well, supposedly it goes to big climate repairs. I call it climate reparations. I hate to say that because I immediately, as people are going to scream at me, but it's really true, right? That's the whole plan is, okay, we've been unusually successful in the world, and developing countries have been doing it, and so now it's time for you to pay, right? And so I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but you're not going to penalize, again, $13,000 a year, folks. That's not a number you'll see very often anywhere. It took me a long time to calculate that number, and maybe it's wrong, but it's certainly not bad enough as it is. It's a big ticket. It's a big ticket.
Well, we've talked about it on this show a couple of times now. It's all these fees that they get charged, the penalties they have to pay, the corporations in particular. That doesn't mean anything. It's not solving a problem. It's just something that they can go on a PR campaign with. Because to them, at the end of the day, it's the cost of doing business. It doesn't really mean a lot to them, especially with the amount of profits everybody makes. They don't care.
Yeah, when earlier in the year, when the news in California was that the governor was going to give us rebates at the pump, right? And I said, so let me get this straight here. So we've got this it's something like 18 to 20% tax chain on top of each gallon of gas here, the bulk of which goes to supposed clean energy campaigns. So we're going to use the taxes that we pay to pay us back the taxes that we already pay, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not going to lower taxes because, we can't do that, right?
We need the money.
Yeah, but we're going to use your taxes to give you rebates on the taxes.
But that's the other thing since COVID, it's like, hey, we're going to do checks for everything and you get some money and you get some money. And it's like, this isn't a solution.
No, because now
we're here.
Now we're in the situation where the Fed is discussing raising their rates 0.75%, which is huge.
They did. So they did today.
Oh, did they? So see, I had read it late last night, early this morning. It hadn't been done yet. So it's official. So they have done that.
Yeah, it's official. And the stock market rewarded them finally for, let's say, hey, you're not as crazy as we thought you were. But now just imagine, think about the COVID mentality. Think about everything that we went through over the past couple of years. Now imagine if it was permanent, right? Imagine if
It is. It hasn't gone away.
Well, I know, but imagine now.
We just think it has.
You're being hit with a big, huge bill. Again, this is not for now. This is an insurance policy for 50 years from now. A climate insurance policy that you personally will never see the benefits of. Your kids may see some benefits, but what? Solar panels in Zimbabwe, doubt my kids are going to see that. Their grandkids for some ocean cleanup event, in India, don't think so. So imagine now every year we get hit with this bill and it never goes away. Like, think about what happened with COVID, right? You just go, well, last summer or a couple summers ago, I'm an instructor at a college. I got paid more money to sit at home and do nothing than I did to teach college. Easy choice, right? I mean, like, I don't have to deal with administration. I don't have to deal with all this stuff. And I just sit home and I make almost twice as much money. Deal, right? So voluntarily pulled myself out of the workforce for that, just for those 3 months, because I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so imagine if that was now business as usual, where people were just going, I don't think I want to do this. I can make almost a pretty good living.
I think, we're trying to head that way. Like, I mean, especially the Democratic Party, they're always talking about friggin' standardized income. I mean, they're going to keep pushing that line.
Yeah, well, if you add climate to this, because they haven't said that. They've been actually very clever about this and not saying that that's what's going to happen. But this is a huge climate tax, and say whatever they call it, a carbon tax, that they're going to hit the big egregious companies. But big egregious companies only pass all that stuff down to us when we pay for the products. So I just don't see that happening. So I would bet that once these penalties start coming into play in our everyday lives, it changes the whole dynamics. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm sitting here going, am I going to spend 3 years with no income developing something, knowing that when I finally hit revenue, I'm going to have to give up 13% of that to the government, something I will never see? No, guess what? I'm now a Singapore company.
I would say small business companies are insane to me right now. Anyways, like, if you do the math before you, like, we've all had those dreams. Hey, I want to start a company. And then if you've ever done the math, you'd run away screaming with your hair on fire because you pay away so much money. And obviously it depends where you live, but I know up by us, it's bad.
Actually, I was talking to Grizz off air about a side business that I'm working on. But when you talk about like how much you're paying as a small company, like Grizz is mentioning, the numbers are huge. So if you talk about like Medicare and all that, your withholdings that you have from your regular paycheck, it's something like Medicare. I don't remember exactly the number. Let's say
in total you're giving up more than 50% of your earnings.
Right. But I'm just like, we'll just focus on one thing at a time, like Medicare. If the number was 6% that you're paying out of your check, if you go into business for yourself, you're now paying double that because the company you work for was paying that. Now it's your responsibility. So whatever you made, it's now 12% instead of 6. I think it might actually be 7%.
Yeah.
But the numbers are not good. And so if they got bad enough, it really is not worth it anymore.
No, it's not. I know plenty of people who got out of businesses because they were paying more out than the business was taking. Like, not that, all right, they were paying out 110, the business was taking in 100%. They were paying out 50%, 60% of what the business was taking in. And that was before they even paid their employees.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy numbers. That's why I mentioned that, things like the big taxes and big penalties that they charge companies. Those companies are big enough, they just ignore it. And now, like you said, Mark, it just gets passed on to the consumer, which is us. So we always pay for it. Like the Fed raised their rates. That's going to come out of our pocket at the end of the day. It's not going to come out of the company's pocket.
Mortgage rates. I mean, no one's going to take a hit for the team, right? It'll come to us.
So let's go back to your book for a minute, and we can wrap up with some of your final thoughts on what some solutions might be. Let's say you end up in charge of things around here. So what are a few big things we can do to solve the problems that we're looking at right now without going too crazy one way or the other? Some real world solutions that actually could work.
Yeah, I would I would highlight conservation. I would come up with a national conservation program. And as soon as you say that to people, they go, well, it's really difficult. I'm like, it's It's more
None of
difficult
this is
than
easy.
actually trying to replace the entire electricity grid that we've built up over 100 years. So it's not that difficult. And so conservation absolutely can work. Second, preservation of natural systems. So trees, reforestation, agri-farming, all kinds of natural solutions. I live here in Central Coast, California, so I'm in ag country, right? Farmers know how to deal with land, right? Foresters know how to deal with forests. You know, trust people who know how to do this and suck CO2 out of the sky. Third, I say we need a new metric. I think we need a metric of dollars per CO2 effect, which no one has right now. I did it myself, and it's probably wrong in many levels, but you never hear people talk about that. Like I had a conversation in San Luis Obispo with one of the local politicians, and they're very proud of their electric vehicle charging stations and the green bike lanes. And they're like, we're now green, and they spent $500,000. And I said, so how much did you affect temperature? And they just, well, we don't know. So I said, well, so what the hell's the point, right? Isn't that the end game? You just spent money, and now you're standing up and getting your certificate and getting your photo op. So we need another metric. So we need to be real about these costs. So I think, and then the last one, I would love to see climate science put under a spotlight in front of the public. I would love to see them go through, you know, if there was ever anything that happened with Donald Trump, put them through that same thing. Any Supreme Court justice that goes up there and is not popular, you know, we find out about the beer he drank when he was in high school. Who gives a damn, right? But this is climate science, supposedly the biggest problem ever in the history of the world. So I would love to have both sides of the aisle questioning these climate scientists and having it be completely transparent. Okay, I think that would just go towards such a long way. You know, there's a reason that Al Gore doesn't ever do debates. Never. He's never had a debate on climate. He just gives monologues. So, and there's a reason.
Super serial.
You can push that argument over pretty clearly, but that's not to say there's not some truth in there. And so I think we need to be digging for that truth. So I would love to see climate science put on, you know, put front and center. Let us have the opportunity to ask questions and really test drive this thing. Because if they're completely right, it'll only help. Mm-hmm. But if they're completely wrong, it'll also only help.
But I think that, I mean, all that comes down to we need a complete political just reform, right? Everything we're doing in this country right now politically is just so ass backwards. Yeah.
Well, and I think the last part I would say is, you know, we're on this massive hunt to decarbonize, which is fine, I think, and let's continue that. I'm not saying that we should stop that. I just don't think that we should double and triple and quadruple down on that. I think if you do the math, again, it's that the avoided donut fallacy. You know, even if you decarbonize, you're still 5 donuts fatter. so it's not a good strategy. It's just not. And if you spent all of your budget, it's really not a good strategy. So continue this evolution like we've been doing. It's been great, and it's been slowly making things better, but there's no reason to double and triple down on this when we know it's not having the effect that we thought it was. So that's my 5 cents worth.
I like it. So where can people get your book and find out more about you and some of your ideas?
Yeah, climaturity.com. I like I said, I invented a word. So climaturity and .com, and that's where it is. It's a fairly easy read. It's about 110 pages. I say it's part science, part satire, and part snark, because it has to be, because that's how I feel about this whole thing. So there's some science in there, but I'm not a scientist. It's just my opinion of the science, and then all my experience in working on the front lines of this, but also in the renewable energy space. And I've got some opinions about that. And I would just encourage. I just want us, us three, but us in general, to have this dialogue. We can't be afraid to talk about this. It just baffles me that no one talks about it, right? It's
a shame.
So that would be the one thing I hope that comes out of any of this effort, is just that we start having this talk.
100%. So thanks, thanks for being on the show, and it's been informative. And I actually, I'm going to read the book and see, dive a little deeper into your ideas. I'm interested to see, more of what you think about it, and, what else is going on out there.
Yeah, and I'll also say, and I say this to other people, tell me where I'm wrong. we got to be willing to be wrong too. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying, here's, based on my experience and what I've read, here's what I think. And if there's something that I just completely missed, then let me know. I mean, I'm totally willing to be wrong on this. I think more of us need to be willing to be wrong on some of this stuff if we ever plan on having it solved. So, so if you read it and you think I'm full of crap, then let me know. I won't take it personally. I may take it a little bit personally, but I really do want to triangulate on this thing and see where a real set of solutions can be found.
Well, Grizz, I don't really know how you feel about it, but after listening to what Marc had to say, I want to read his book to see what his other ideas are, because we did some like a high level flyby of the topics that he covers and what he thinks about things. But I want to see some more specific details in his book.
I mean, I fully understand what you're saying, that yes, what the media is putting out is like they're going for fire and brimstone, shock and awe, trying to get people's attention.
Yeah, they are.
But I also, I mean, I feel like there's more correlation than what he's allowing. So maybe his book goes into more detail. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's an entire book instead of a 1 hour podcast. So it's got to go into some kind of detail. But I'm interested to see, how does he view things like the actual measured carbon numbers in the atmosphere. I'm not a scientist. I don't really know shit about it, except that from my perspective, it doesn't really look like global warming as much as the seasons are shifting forward 2 months. You've noticed that too, right?
Yeah, I have. We've talked about this before. I still think it's global warming. Like, not global warming. Still think there's climate change there.
Of course, there's undeniable climate change.
Because, like I talked about in the episode, dude, there's natural things going on that either A, we didn't hear about it due to the news, or they're just happening a fucking shit ton more.
Yeah, the extreme weather. I wish he was a little more well read on that topic, because I wanted to hear his thoughts a little more in depth. But I think the extreme and more constant weather, that right there is enough to say, hey, something's definitely different.
I mean, dude, Lake Mead on its own is kind of I know we're using that water as well as it's evaporating, but that's pretty glaring,
Yeah. Now, again, like I said, the news media would have you believe that we've got 10 years before complete earthly implosion. And it sounds to me, after this conversation, like Marc understands the danger, just not to the level, like he doesn't think that it's to the level of the news media, which, they sensationalize everything.
I think he recognizes that there is an issue there, but is it catastrophic meltdown tomorrow? No.
What do you guys think?
Thank you again for listening to Beautiful Bastards. New episodes every Monday. Remember to like and subscribe. Since when does anyone have a clue about what they want?
Earth provides enough to satisfy every man, but not every man's greed.